And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. On this week's episode, Donald Byrd, his life and times and best hits. Donald Byrd was born on December 9, 1932 in Michigan. At the age of 23, he hit the bebop scene with a hard-driving lyrical trumpet style. In 1955, he booked a spot with Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers band. He was also instrumental in mentoring several other rising jazz stars, notably Herbie Hancock. He later joined Blue Note Records and worked alongside them for 20 years. In the 50s, he collaborated with several other jazz greats, from Thelonious Monk to John Coltrane, then toured Europe for a while. In 1973, he entered the jazz-funk soul field with a new sound of his own. His style was evident in his album Blackbird, which went on to sell more than 1 million copies. The album blended jazz, pop and hip-hop influences. In later years, he experimented with spiritual music. In 2000, he was awarded the NEA Jazz Masters Award from the National Endowment for the Arts. Donald Byrd was one of the leading jazz trumpeters of his time. His style blended funk, fusion and R&B. He was born in Michigan on December 9, 1932. He attended Cass Technical High School, which saw a stream of other jazz talents like Alice Coltrane, Paul Chambers and Ron Carter, among others. They were all big proponents of bebop after the innovations of Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie in that field. Byrd himself was a big fan of bebop, which was rooted in the blues and added a rhythmic intensity. His style was very lyrical and introspective. After graduating from Howard University, he took up music full-time. In 1963, he released his debut album, A New Perspective, featuring a gospel choir. The album went on to become a massive hit, topping the charts upon release. Byrd was also a fan of teaching. He lectured in several universities. In the mid-70s, Byrd formed a new band comprising students at Howard University and called the band the Blackbirds. They started recording in collaboration with the Mizell Brothers, a production company at the time. In 1973, they debuted with their album Blackbird. The album was a massive success, peaking on the R&B charts, the jazz charts and the pop charts simultaneously. Towards the latter 70s, Byrd also began experimenting with fusion music. Many of his collaborations with saxophonist Gary Bartz were a testimonial to this style. In later years, he experimented with spiritual music. In 2000, he was awarded the NEA Jazz Masters Award from the National Endowment for the Arts. Donald Byrd died on February 4, 2013, leaving behind a legacy as one of the greatest trumpet players from the fusion genre. To celebrate Jazz Month, acclaimed vocalist and composer Rick Boggart is touring in New York City, also releasing new recordings and a documentary that showcases his legendary career. You can experience the magic of Rick Boggart live and on screen. Also, Rick's out with some great music releases. Mr. Pagani, a collection of jazz classics, and What a Wonderful World, a series of emotional, heartfelt melodies. Also, there's a live performance by Rick Boggart and his trio called From Bourbon Street to Carnegie Hall, streamed on Apple TV and Foursome, beginning on International Jazz Day, that's April 30th. The documentary tells the story of Rick Boggart, from his beginnings as a New Orleans jazz artist to his legendary performances at Carnegie Hall. The documentary also includes behind-the-scenes footage, exclusive interviews and more. Rick started out in New Orleans in the 70s. He went on to collaborate with other great jazz artists like June Gardner, Milton Zedrick, Wallace Davenport and others. He's also starred in TV films like Earthly Possessions and documentaries like Where the Clarinet Swings. For more information, please visit www.rickboggart.com. The first one's called A New Perspective. This album starts off with a gospel feel, then builds into a more pop-oriented sound. There's 5 songs in the album, each one gospel and blues-oriented. This one's a concept album, one that tells a story through the music, each song a build-up to a different chapter of the narrative. Another album called Blackbird. This album peaked at the number 36 position on the Billboard charts upon release. Also, the title track made the Hot 100. This one's a very funky album. Byrd's trumpet solos are very invigorating. And an album called Fancy Free. This album was released in 1970 and has a Latin theme to it. The album also sees the use of electric piano for the very first time ever in a Donald Byrd album. The first one's called A New Perspective. This one's a very unique jazz album. The biggest difference in the album is the fact that it's not jazz singers in the album. The orchestra comprises a 7-member gospel choir. And most of the singing is scat singing. That's where the singer mimics musical instruments instead of actual lyrics. The song starts off with a gospel feel, then builds into a more pop-oriented sound. It's got a 1960s jazzy vibe to it. And then the backdrop instrumental orchestra joins in. It's a star ensemble featuring the likes of trumpeter Donald Byrd, saxophonist Hank Mobley and others. There's 5 songs in the album, each one gospel and blues oriented. The songs are based on religious themes, songs like Elijah, Beast of Burden, Chant and others. This one's a concept album, one that tells a story through the music, each song a build-up to a different chapter of the narrative. A similar album, A Love Supreme by John Coltrane, one of the greatest concept albums in spiritual jazz. Elijah is a very joyful song. Beast of Burden, a slow bluesy tune. There's a mournful hymn called Cristo Redemptor. A very energetic bop-themed song called The Black Disciple, and Chant, the album's closing song that's very refreshing and invigorating. Another album called Blackbird. In 1982, Donald Byrd was going through a very difficult time. His style was unusual and found no niche in the existing jazz market. And then people started accepting it as a blend of jazz rock and jazz fusion. His resurgence into popularity was due to the fact that this album, Blackbird, made waves as a chart-topping album on the Billboard charts in 1973. Blackbird peaked at number 36 on the Billboard charts, and the title track made the Hot 100. It's a very funky album. Also the appearance of synthesizer music, which was novel at the time. This album was groundbreaking at the time. Byrd's solos were especially invigorating, some great trumpet playing by the maestro. Joe Sample adds the overall vibe with his keyboard playing, as does Roger Glenn on flute, which also adds a vintage 50s feel to the music. And an album called Fancy Free. Towards the end of the 60s, many jazz artists started incorporating electrical musical instruments into their repertoire. For instance, there was Miles Davis, whose electric album Fusion generated a lot of waves. Donald Byrd was right up there with him, with his first ever electric album Fancy Free. This album was released in 1970 and has a Latin theme to it. The album sees the use of electric piano for the first time ever in a Donald Byrd album. Duke Pearson was playing it. There was also Roland Wilson on guitar. Other instrumentalists include Julian Priest on trombone, Frank Foster on saxophone, and others. The music is fairly conventional. Tracks like The Uptown, a soul jazz tune with a dance-oriented groove. Byrd has a beautiful lyrical solo on this track. Another highlight, the opening track Estevanico, featuring reverberating guitar music that moves into a slow groove. Fancy Free is an upbeat Latin-themed jazz track. The conga, a Brazilian percussion instrument, makes an appearance on this track. And I Love the Girl sees the electric keyboard coming into play. This one's a beautiful ballad. Guitarist Michael McClintock is out with his debut album Here and There. Michael's work is shaped in music influence from different landscapes and genres. This album is a reflection of that passion. He's a multi-instrumentalist, composer, and arranger known for his soulful guitar work and musical vision. His music draws inspiration from Cuban, Brazilian, and traditional jazz. So Here and There is his debut album. It's a compilation of his own compositions. A genre-blending journey shaped by classical jazz, Cuban, and Brazilian music. The instrumentals feature different types of guitars, each one contributing a unique texture to the music. There's a nylon string guitar, a steel guitar, and a Cuban tray. That's an instrument central to McClintock's musical identity. So Here and There is a beautiful debut album by a very creative guitarist. For more information, please visit www.michaelmcclintockmusic.com. So that was some trending album news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Joshua Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about more of Donald Byrd's best albums of all time. Stay tuned.